Hey, soul survivors, we're back here with Joshua Schwartz, who is getting ready to go to England. We're going to talk about his healing journey and some of the traits of narcissism and borderline. He is borderline, not a narcissist, but when you start your healing journey, like Josh has done, you start to become kind of hyper vigilant where you can pick up on red flags. So I'm really excited for this show today. So, Joshua, you just got out. And tell us about your mental health journey and where you're going now. A big trip ahead.
So, hello everyone. So I am currently still in a program. I get out Friday. I'm discharged from the program from the Veterans Affairs. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. And I have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. I think we talked last time. I'm not sure what we talked about the last time I was traveling in my adventures, but I kind of had a mental health breakdown. And I ended up getting back into drugs and alcohol. And then I just kind of mentally broke, and I knew that I needed like help. I knew that I needed some. So
that's good. When you recognize you need help. A lot of narcissists won't do that. A lot of borderlines, they realize some of the things that they're struggling with. But can I ask you, when you got back into the drugs and alcohol, what were some of your triggers or triggers that you have in other situations that tend to have you self-soothe or mask, hide away all your pain? Whether
that's kind of what it is. So for me, the biggest thing is a couple things. I think we talked about this before, losing my kids. That's a big thing. For 3 years, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. 3 years I was dating, or well, kind of dating romantically, this girl on the internet that I met on my live streams. And the multiple trips to England and her never showing up. But also a lot to do with it is I was on medication for a while and I took myself off meds. And so my main drug of choice is marijuana, and it stops my racing thoughts, but it also does something where, if you see today our conversation, there's a lot of analytical going on, a lot of analyzing, and then I'm creating these stories. And our brains love to do that. Everybody's brain does that. We always make it like there's an unknown. We try to create this story to fill in that unknown. But my brain does it worse than a lot of people.
Right.
And so so one of the things that the marijuana does, or the alcohol, is it shuts that off. It shuts off my brain completely, right?
Right. And you had mentioned something earlier. We've talked pretty much all day today about the REM sleep.
Yeah.
How when you stop doing the marijuana or drinking so much that your REM sleep was affected, kind of re-triggered the ability to go into the REM sleep. We do need that. That is where we're processing our thoughts. And you've had some nightmares of.
Yeah. So when I stopped using again, and I came back to here. I came back to the States in March, the end of March, basically the very beginning of April, and I went into the VA May 14th. So during that whole time I was back, I was just smoking weed every day, all day long, and then I'd have a couple beers at night. And then I was like, all right, I'm going into treatment, and so I just quit cold turkey, and it took about a good 3 or 4 weeks for my brain to kind of normalize somewhat. It takes longer than that, but you have something called Paul's post-acute withdrawal symptoms or whatever, and there are these different stages. Well, anyways, so I wasn't getting good sleep. I wasn't sleeping for a while there. They put me on sleep meds and all that stuff. And so what happened is once my brain started to normalize and come back, all of a sudden it was like, and I wanted to deal with my kids and the situation that happened, losing my kids. What happened was I started having reoccurring nightmares, and my nightmares, it's because, without being officially diagnosed, and somebody did put it in my file, I have PTSD from the situation. And so nightmares is part of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so my nightmares weren't like going to war or things like this. My nightmares were my kids. Like I remember one dream I woke up, and this is one of the nights I think I woke up sweating, or I was really distressed. I was with my ex-wife or something, I don't know, and I went to go get into our minivan, and I got in the back for some reason. When I got in the back, sitting in the front seat was our one son, Thomas, and he was about the same age as when he was when he got taken. And he looks at me and he's like, Dad, what happened? You were just supposed to get a job and come get us. And so I like woke right up in the middle of that. And I was just like, I didn't know what to do, you know, and it still stirs up a little bit of ugh inside. But, and then there were also times where we talked about where, you know, I don't have factual evidence. I don't have proof of this, but I was in the situation and you know, we have all this circumstantial evidence that my wife attempted to plot against the end of my life a few times. And so I did have a couple reoccurring nightmares. One of them was her and her ex-husband trying to kill me, and or not her ex-husband. I am her current husband. But he had no part of any of this, anyways. It was another guy that had part of the whole situation. But it was the dream was her and her current husband tried to kill me, and then there were other times where people were trying to kill me or get me, you know, and I'm running from them, and which is weird because I never had dreams like this. So yeah, I started having recurring dreams, and so they put me on something called Prozocin, which helps with it's a blood pressure medicine, but I guess it helps with nightmares.
Certain, yeah, contraindications and side effects sometimes are beneficial. So I know that the medication seems to be working. What are some other things that you've done in therapy that you've been very thankful for that seem to help you?
So we have been doing a lot of CBT and DBT, cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. And so one of the things is I have, as borderline, I have, okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I do have, like, if you look up, and we talked about this before, borderline, it's in the same cluster B type personality group. I share some of the characteristics, they overlap with narcissism, psychopathy. However, the big difference is I have an abundance of empathy, like an over amount of empathy. And we just talked about this. There's a difference. There's, I guess, two empathies, which I found this out, is cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. We're lower on the cognitive empathy, which
that's where you kind of understand, like, it makes sense. You'll be sad your dog died. Like, I get it, but they don't feel it.
Well, no, the way they explain it is cognitive empathy is perception in someone else's shoes. So like you telling me your dog died, I can't really put myself in your shoes and see like, oh, she's so sad because your dog died. But emotional empathy, I can see the emotion on you, and I pick up on that, and I can relate to that. I feel that sadness. I feel that sense of grief just like you do. But it's different to perceive it like you do. So, and it's very understandable because like somebody would call and say, oh, my grandma died or something. To me, and I'm not trying to say I'm heartless or cold. To me, I'm just like, okay. But then when I hear them sad or upset, then I feel for them, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? Like, oh, and
so you tap into the emotions.
Right. And so that's the difference. So we have higher levels of emotional empathy, and that's where I just told you the whole thing with the psychiatrists, where they did this statistical study where they, you know, they took these pictures of these people's faces, and we can pick up on emotion really well. However, we mostly focus on the negative emotion. And so because we focus on the negative emotion, and we're always in this like state of hypervigilance, like we're always concerned someone's going to hurt us or something. We're always analyzing everything. So we tend to have faulty thinking. And so CBT and DBT helps us check our thoughts. And so what I've been working on, some of the stuff I've been working on is like, I have this set of questions, a couple set of questions. And like, I have a belief, right? The belief is whatever. For example, in the beginning, I hated medicine. I believed that medicine was bad. All psychotropic drugs are messing with people's head. Well, where does that belief come from? Is there evidence for and evidence against? That's question one. Then are you mistaking this with habit or fact? Is it like you just overly think that medication is bad? So it's a process that we go through and take our thought or our belief and check it and analyze it to see, you know, I guess the way my psychologist put it, we can come to some sort of kind of middle ground where we can kind of say, okay, we can come up whether my thinking is faulty or not. And so what's happened in this situation is I've learned that a lot of, not a lot, but some of my thinking is faulty. And it's almost like, and I told her, sometimes I feel super crazy because I have to argue with my brain. Yeah. And it's wild. It's like you're having this argument inside your head against yourself, right? And I feel crazy. I'm like, yeah, I feel that way. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm arguing with myself right now. But I know that the thought my brain is telling me is faulty. And I know that because I've done the analyzing of it. And I'm like, I don't care. It's not right. It's not right. It's not right.
Where did you get the thought?
So I've experienced from others, like friends of mine who take medication, that bad experiences. I have a buddy who got put on Paxil, Zoloft, and he cannot come off it. Like, so
Addicted, like
well,
his body is.
yeah. So what happens is this is a well-known side effect of Paxil or Zoloft or whatever, is brain, it feels like you get brain zaps, like electric shocks in your brain.
Oh.
And so he's tried many a time to come off of it, and he can't. I mean, the doctors, they've tried to medically bring him off of it, and every time he can't. So he has to, for the rest of his life, maintain a very small dose to keep the brain zaps away. Then on top of that, they played, I think we talked about this before with my son, they played guinea pig a lot. From the time he was like 5 or 6, they threw him on a ton of meds. And at one point he was on like 11 meds, and he tried to kill himself at 9, in the psych ward at 11. And all,
your son is also borderline.
he does not have that diagnosis. I'm the only one currently with that diagnosis. However, he was diagnosed with ADHD and I think maybe bipolar when he was younger. He's seen a bunch of different therapists, but the last 1 or 2 therapists said, you know, maybe we should look into the borderline because his father's borderline. But then the last therapist that he talked to apparently said, I think they got it all wrong, and I think he's a little autistic because he shows, and that, you know, that leads me to believe that, you know, am I borderline or am I autistic? I mean, I have a diagnosis, so, but I think because with him, he does certain things. You know, like when he gets really excited when we're talking, you know, he'll do this number right here.
Oh.
You know, there are little telltale signs that's why. So
Does he walk to
I think he used to, yeah. And so, but yeah, that was my experience, and you know that really messed with his head. He doesn't take medication anymore. He does smoke weed all the time. He self-medicates, but that's it. He doesn't drink. And you know, I just had these experiences with medication that were all bad.
Now, how do you feel? It seems a lot of people, I don't smoke marijuana, but a lot of people smoke it. Sometimes to mask things, but do you think that it helps or hurts people who are struggling with mental illness?
I think everybody's different. I think you can't really label one thing and say it helps or hurts, because in a couple different aspects it helps me, but then in a couple other aspects it hurts me.
See, I think personally that I can understand how it would help in the moment, but it's not allowing you to work through what you need to work through.
That it very much so. And also, like I said, like it takes away my inhibition, like it takes away my drive, my motivation. I don't want to do anything. I just want to eat all day, just sit around. And I just think, you know, I'm not being productive or doing anything productive with my life when I'm doing it. So I just personally, for me, it's no good. I mean, my son, he smokes daily, and he works hard. Right. He's got a job, makes really good money. He still has mental health issues, and I think a lot of that is he's avoiding a lot of it because he doesn't deal with a lot of it. And a lot of it was from my relationship with his mother, but we split up when he was really young. So a lot of it was, I mean, we've had a pretty chaotic life, all of us. So,
and I do want to interject that that's why it's really good if you guys are struggling with depression, anxiety, CPTSD, things like that, that you come to the point where you realize that it needs to be addressed, that we need to dive a little deeper and heal from these wounds, because if you leave those wounds, they can fester. And just like how you're saying, like smoking pot, some people either overeat or don't eat healthy during that cravings. And also, maybe you're going to get depressed that you're not achieving the goals that you're meant to, that it affects your life. Even if it masks the pain for a little while, you're not living the best life. You're getting by, I guess. But some people do. Some people are fantastic workers on it.
Yeah, I guess it's like I said, to each his own. I think, if you're abusing it, I mean, my son smokes really high levels of it. He smokes wax, so he doesn't do it all day long, but he does kind of in a way.
You build a tolerance.
Yeah. I was actually, because in the program I'm in, you have to take drug tests and alcohol tests. And I think I was still testing positive a month and a half afterwards because my levels was so high. But unlike my son, I go overboard. I you know, because I don't have to work because I'm on VA disability, like I get a pension or whatever from the VA. And so I could just kind of do whatever I want. And so I would just get high, like totally, you know, eat a whole bunch and just be zoned out of my mind. And
So I know you need your disability, but if everything was okay and you didn't need it, do you think it's a blessing not to have to work, or do you think sometimes it's better emotionally for us to work, to have
well, you know my belief in the good old Lord and the Bible, and the Bible tells us that we're supposed to work. So I think that it is a blessing that I get this disability, but I have to I still have to do something.
He is always doing something. He's got your destination dopamine. He's enrolled in his master program. You start that what day?
Next Monday, I start my
Next
master's
Monday,
program. Yeah.
and getting ready. Tell me about your trip to England. What is the purpose of going to England, and how you feel that that will affect the stability or instability of your mental health at this time?
So you know, I was traveling the world and I enjoyed it, and I want to continue that. And I kind of devised a plan to be able to continue to travel around, but it gets really difficult and expensive to keep flying back and forth from America. It's not super expensive. The prices have went up. Before I was getting tickets for like 250.
Oh.
Now, but I also just paid. I did get my ticket for like 270, but I paid for luggage. That was like $100 or something,
Right.
and then I paid for a flexi ticket. So if I wanted to change it, I could. So
How much is that for a flight?
it was like an extra $100. So I think it was like 490 total, 491 total. But and that's just one way. But so what I figured is, and it got really difficult to like go around hostels all over different countries. You have to plan. So what I noticed a lot of people doing backpacking is that but most of these people are from Europe or the UK. They would just go for a weekend and come back and then go. And it's hard for me to do that all the way across the ocean. So I figured I would rent a place, and I'm looking for a room there. I'm renting a room, and I'm just going to study. So I'm actually going to live there for maybe 6 months or so, maybe longer. I don't know.
So if you're from the UK, put a shout out in the comments. Say hello to Joshua. Wish him well.
And so as far as my stability, as long as I keep my mindset, and this is where my thoughts get skewed, right? Like I am kind of panicking because I'm leaving a safety zone, a safety net, and I'm going back out there. However, I don't know why I'm panicking because I've done this a million times. I've already traveled the world. There's not anything to really be worried about. As long as I stick to my plan and do what I'm going to do, then there's not a problem. I think that what happened is I had this plan to go over there and stay with a friend, or well, stay at a place and then side work with my buddy who owns a business, and under, you know, some money here and there. And that kind of transpired into talking to that girl again that I was talking to for 3 years on the internet, 3.5 years or whatever. And I think we haven't really talked about that yet, but that was like a whole nother story of like where I went there 6 times to meet this girl and she hasn't shown up any of the times. And
So you've never met her in person?
Never met her in person. We've talked on the phone. I mean, probably logged thousands of hours talking on the phone, you know, messages.
So you're a little concerned about how real the situation is because you've never Zoom called her.
Yeah, we've never FaceTimed.
It's been 3 years?
3.5 years, a little over 3.5 years. I met her right when I got out of the VA last time in 2020. And so, you know, I can't really say anything because most of my friends and everybody have told me to let it drop, and I refuse to let it drop. Nobody, there's a couple things that make the situation really weird. So we all know, if we don't, catfish, what that is. If somebody pretends to be somebody on the internet or wherever to get you to do something. And this is what it sounds like, cut and dry case of catfishing, right? Because she's never FaceTimed me, you know, whatever. However, there's a couple things. Number one, I've never sent this girl any money. I mean, I've sent her flowers and things like that before. Nothing major. I bought stuff for her. I have stuff in my storage unit here for her that I bought for her. But this girl has sent me thousands of dollars, bought me loads of tickets to come to England. You know, And so it doesn't make a lot of sense because I would go there, she would buy me tickets, I would go there, and then she would have an excuse why she couldn't meet me. And then
And that's okay once or twice, maybe, not really, but 6 times.
6 times, yeah. And I went to her town twice specifically. And there was an example we were just talking about where, she said, this is finally it. We're finally meeting. This was not the last one, but the trip before this, we were trip number 5. We were finally meeting. This is it. She rents a car. The car's sitting outside. I'm at the train station waiting, and she keeps telling me she's on her way. We're texting this and this. Long story short, she doesn't show up. The car rental place is like, oh, well, sorry. She paid for the car too. She rented it and paid for it. And it was out. It was just wild. And she doesn't show up and gives me some excuse why she didn't show up, and she panicked. So she put me up in a hotel, and I stay there for 2 extra days and trying to convince her to come meet me. For 2 extra days. That's not.
See,
like,
that's why it gets confusing, because if it is a catfish situation, it could be male, female, just they can mislead you either way, that maybe they're either lonely, because you're great at conversation. And I know that you guys would communicate almost nonstop.
Yeah.
Or they want to see the challenge. Can I make this person do certain things? So they might invest in a plane ticket to get you to come over. Like, what an ego stroke. You like my personality so much, you're going to do this for me. But if I don't represent myself, I can't show you who I am.
Right.
Because then I lose you. So it can be a game.
Well, on a side note, I had property up in the woods. I was building this whole thing, and it got in, and this is where part of my mental illness, and then I think I said love is blind. I got so wrapped up in this that I sold my property. I basically got rid of everything to go over there and be with this person, to live with them, and they never showed up. So essentially, I kind of looked at it like she was investing in a game.
When you told, pretty much, yeah.
That's what it seemed like. She was investing, and because I mean, why? I was stupid. I had 5 acres up in the woods, that beautiful. I mean, people wanted it bad, and I was like, I got this, off the grid situation going on, and I sold it all, and now I'm kind of homeless, but it's okay because I can easily build myself right back up. I mean, I've done it 100 million times.
Right. He's not broke.
Nah, I'm not broke at all. It's just starting over again and again and again and again. It just sucks after a while, and I haven't really started yet. I could have started over before, but I wanted to travel the world, and
You're
so so I've been just using my money to just travel the world, and that's kind of what I did.
So when you told her that you were getting ready to sell your property to be with her, did she say things like that's fantastic, or don't do that, or it's your choice? What were
more your choice? Think about it. Make sure you think about it. Like, she played the devil's advocate with that
and
one.
that way she doesn't hold any accountability. It was your choice.
Right. Basically. Right. And that's the thing, there's a lot of behaviors indicative of someone with a particular type of personality disorder. And there is a very good dynamic between borderlines and narcissists, psychopaths, other borderlines, because especially narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths, but they don't really label that. They don't use that term anymore, psychopath, sociopath. It's just antisocial personality disorder. And so the dynamic really is like, so if you look it up, the NIMH does a good job. If you don't know what that is, National Institute of Mental Health. Also, Psychology Today does a really good outline articles of this dynamic relationship, because what happens is the narcissist is seeking validation and wants to be validated all the time. And the borderline is just, the thing that we suffer the biggest from is abandonment, rejection, and wanting to be loved, right?
Yeah. This is what I want to research more. Borderline. Do you feel you were borderline growing up, or do you feel that it could possibly be an outcome side effect of narcissistic abuse?
So they don't know specifically. They think it could be both environmental and genetic. And I would probably say it's probably because I grew up in that particular situation. Okay. And I don't really have, I have a mother, and we don't talk, and she wants nothing to really do with me. She never did. I remember talking to Roxanne, that's the girl in the UK, about my mother the other day. And I remember a point in time when my mother would tell me, for a while, she told me not to tell people that I was her child.
Oh.
And there's a lot more here.
Why would she say that?
Well, because of my behavior, I was acting bad or whatever. But still, regardless, I would never. I mean, my son was dealing drugs and doing crazy stuff, and I would never tell my son. He doesn't do that anymore, by the way. But he got in trouble and learned his lesson. Um, but I would never be like you're not, don't tell people you're not my son. And so there's a level of it there. So I would say, from most of what I went through, just like I didn't know what PTSD was, and now I know, and I would say that's probably more what I have, I guess, is because of the trauma as a child. Because
I think even the stuff in your marriage, because PTSD, I think, would have been a little bit shorter in a time.
Yeah, so I don't think we went all the way back into my childhood and my history, but I was abused. I was beat as a kid. My mom was married 4 times. I'm the oldest. I went through all of those marriages. I watched my mom get beat. I got beat. I was never really sexually abused. I think I was exposed to sex and things like that early by people. But I think I was also explorative into that,
Right.
Even though I was a kid, but I don't think there was a repeated pattern of sexual abuse, but there was a pattern of abuse and verbal abuse and all this stuff growing up. And there was just a lot of different traumas. And then, my losing my kids and my couple marriages, and just, I'm pretty sure that, a lot of that's where the borderline comes from, is majority, I think, of the trauma. And, so could be genetic. I don't know that. I'm not sure, but I don't think they really know it yet either.
Yeah. So I noticed you said that you were married what, twice?
Yeah.
So in between those marriages, how long was your downtime before moving on to a relationship with the new person? And did your unhealed wounds affect your second marriage?
So it's really weird. With my first, I wasn't married to her. So I kind of have a weird timeline. So my very first, I wasn't married to her. We were together 8 years. Then she left me, understandable. I was really a terror then. We'll just say that. I was not a nice guy then. I mean, I didn't beat her or anything, but I was manipulative a lot. I lied a lot. Basically, all of the traits that are the negative part of this, I was that. And so understandable why she left. And then fast forward to my first wife, that was like a 30-second thing. And that girl is a narcissist. I mean, I can't say she's not diagnosed.
What do you mean 30
it was like I was infatuated with this girl. She knew she was really pretty, but she was kind of like, if you were to use the term, hood rat, I guess. Okay. And she was like sleeping with everybody, and she just was manipulating like crazy.
The thing, as soon as that first
no, there was 2 years in between, 2.5 years in between there. And then, but that was kind of a joke. Like, I wouldn't even count that as a marriage, because it literally lasted I was infatuated with this girl. She wouldn't really have anything, like, she would hang out with me and do all kinds of, like, we never did anything sexually. She would hang out with me, cuddle with me, whatever, but she would never like commit with me or say anything or whatever. And she was always running around, sleeping with all kinds of different guys and just really messing with me. And then when we did finally, when I graduated boot camp, because I've always been overweight, and she had a problem with me being overweight because she was real skinny. And when I graduated boot camp, that's when things, that's when we had sex. That's when everything was like, oh. And then we were together like maybe a month or two. And then she came down to North Carolina, where I was stationed for like 4 days, and then left and came back. And then that was the end of it. So it was very short lived. But to my actual, from my ex-wife, or my ex that I have my oldest kid with, to my, I want to say I was single for almost 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Probably. Even maybe from that girl, that Martha girl, maybe until my new relationship. Nah.
How did you handle that downtime?
When I was in the Marine Corps, I just slept around a lot, and I was promiscuous. So right now, from my marriage till now, I haven't been in a relationship, and it's been probably about 4 years I've been single. I have had sex a couple times in the beginning, and then I didn't for a long time, and then I went through an era of when I was overseas, and there was this prostitution, and that was not good. But yes, I did that. And then, but I've stayed single for like 4 years now because I've been trying hard to work on myself because I am 44 years old. I'm not getting any younger, and I don't want to go into another toxic relationship again. That's my main concern. So and it does get hard. You get really lonely, and it's not, yes, sex plays a key role in it, but so does like cuddling and a lot of other things. And so you get lonely, but I also would rather face this loneliness that sucks than face craziness that it really sucks. I don't want any more of that. So yeah, like right now I've been single other than this online dating, I guess, that I've been doing. I've been single for 4 years.
So. You talked to her approximately, and we saw like that she said goodbye to you today.
Yeah.
And what are your emotions like right now?
I'm not really concerned about it right now because we've said goodbye many times. And it's not that I'm not concerned about it in a way that I don't care. It's that I guess you guys don't know the backstory, and there's so much craziness, like her leaving me. Like that time, her leaving me at the bus station and not showing up was almost felt like, imagine being left at the altar. That was almost like what that was like, because this was already like 3 years into our online dating. And so she just, like, I was so excited and giddy and ready to meet her, and she just, it was just like this huge crush, and it was really tough. So I've had that happen many times from her, and this is how my ex-wife was. My first my first wife, the actual Martha, the one that I married that was really short-lived, she was like that. She crushed me all the time. My next wife, Christy, who I was with for 8 years and had 4 kids with, she crushed me a lot too, just like that. And now this girl right here. And so that is one of the reasons why I brought myself here to the VA also, was to deal with and learn to cope with having healthy relationships, and also how to use boundaries, something that I lack, that most borderlines lack. We lack boundaries. And so, like I was saying about that dynamic of the narcissist and the borderline, is there's this idea that the narcissist seeks validation all the time. They constantly have to be validated, right? And be told that they're the best, or they're whatever, they're so pretty, blah, 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 blah. And we'll do that. Then we need this sense of love, and this, we don't want to be rejected, and we just want to be cared for, because that's something that I didn't get as a child. And so they, in the very beginning, love bomb the shit out of you. Right. And I'm seeing it now with somebody else that I talked to on the phone recently, who's like, oh, we were made for each other and all this stuff. Right. And I'm like, oh, I know this behavior. I know this. And maybe before, in my mental illness, maybe when I was high or not focused on it, I would just ignore it and be like, yeah, this is great, blah, blah, blah. But I'm at that point, like I said, I want a healthy relationship. And just to say this, if you are watching this and you are borderline, I want to say this one thing. There's a great psychiatrist out there, Dr. K, I can't remember. You can check it out, Healthy Gamers or something. He will tell you that borderline has the best prognosis, that we can manage it and we can get way better, and we can be healthy and be in healthy relationships. And a lot of times statistics show that it just takes one healthy relationship, like say the other person isn't all these things, right. One healthy, stable relationship, and it almost fixes a lot of the issues that the borderline has. And it is tough, and it's hard. And it's scary for someone to be with borderline, because sometimes we have those narcissistic traits. But just to say this, everybody out there in the whole planet has those. Those are just survival skills. We demonize those words, narcissist. There's a difference between being a narcissist and being a malevolent one. Somebody who's malevolent, they're trying to hurt you. They're using these skills to hurt you. Somebody who is just a narcissist, basically it's the same thing that I'm going through right now, like learning in these groups. It's okay, yes, we did these behaviors, yes, we did this, but what need were we trying to? There's a need there that we're trying to fulfill, right? The difference is a lot of times narcissists lack empathy and emotion, and so regardless of whether they know it's right or wrong, they still won't care. They'll do it whether it hurts your feelings.
And a lot of times, sometimes they don't even realize that they're hurting you. Like we were reading through those text messages and they're just saying this, or I don't want to be mean, but you this, that. And it's like, you know, what you're about to say is mean and you're still saying it.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that it still cuts like a knife sometimes to people. That's an emotion we have to deal with.
And I think for the most part, sometimes when I say, like, for example, I told you the other day I used a particular word to her and I knew she hated it.
I think every woman hates that word.
That was benevolent. I knew what I was doing. That was evil. It was evil in the way that I knew what I was saying. I was saying it because I was so fed up. And you know, the reality is you're responsible for your reaction, you know. And so if you're acting out, was it right what I did? No, you're right about that. I understand that that wasn't right, but I have been, it's like being in a ring with somebody for so long and just being punch, 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 punch. I guess I should just step out of the ring. That's the smart thing to do. But I took a jab back and I used this word because I knew it bothered her really, really bad. And so I did that. However, like what you're talking about in the text messages, in pure conversation, when I brought up, for example, I brought up her lying and certain things, she specifically said things to her.
Right.
I was just addressing the behavior. I was just saying, look, here's what we're focused on.
But in her mind, she doesn't think she's being hurtful. That's where it's messed up.
Well, that's what's crazy. I don't understand, because it is hurtful. It's very hurtful. And I see it and everybody sees that. Like, you're like, because it wasn't me jabbing at her, right? I was just saying, you got caught lying. Just admit you got caught lying and then move on with it.
Right.
No, I won't admit I'm lying. I'll just project onto you that you've done this, you've done that, blah, blah, blah. And then if I'm backed in a corner where I can't really get out of it, I'll just say other things off the wall, like the whole dating thing. And she wasn't really into you. She wasn't this. And I'm like, how do you know any of this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? If she's using you or she's doing this, and I'm like, okay. And I knew when I started to see those remarks, I'm like, she's just trying to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, because Josh had gone out on 2 dates. You know, it's normal. You don't always click. You can have a great conversation, things like that, but it might not be something you want to pursue. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that you're not worthy of somebody's love. It just didn't click, and that's okay.
Well, the whole concept was, in order to go on dates, generally two people are into each other. Like, you got to be attracted to each other. You find different qualities. You're like, okay, yeah, da, 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 da. You don't just randomly go on. Maybe some people do. I don't. I was kind of into her. She was into me a little bit. I asked her for coffee. She's like, oh, I was thinking the same thing, blah, blah, blah. We went out for coffee, breakfast. We talked. We had a good conversation. I asked her out again. She kind of turned me down a little bit. And then we're both really into God and our walks. And there was this other thing. And jokingly, I said, oh, let's go out to this place. She's like, oh my God, let's go. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, I wanted to go. I was like, all right, let's go. So she's like, well, I had a date with my girlfriend, but she's like, let me call her. And if she'll swap and move it around, I'll go with you. I said, okay. So she did. And we were able to go. And it just seemed like, it wasn't necessarily that we didn't click so much. It was like, she has a lot of her own insecurities, and you could see it come out. I mean, we went to this theater, and not to digress and get off on this thing, but there's this 2 girls sitting next to her, and we all start talking, me and the 2 girls, but the girl was married to a doctor and she was in the Air Force. They both were in the Air Force, and I'm military. And so we got to talking about England, and they lived in England for a couple of years, and I'm moving there and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And so I think that girl felt kind of left out, and you could see in her attitude, like, boom, it triggered something. And then the next thing you know, I was like, and then when I dropped her back off and I left, I texted her and said, I'm sorry you didn't have a good time. And she's like, oh my gosh, I don't want you to think that. But again, that whole reading the negative emotion thing, right? I could see that there was some negative going on there. And maybe it was the only 30%. She was 70% happy, but I was reading the 30% like it's not working. Right. So I just let it lie. I never pursued it after that. I didn't go. But regardless, so, you know, but yeah, there is this dynamic where these particular type of people will feed off of borderlines. But the one thing I want to say is that talking to her yesterday, the day before or something, she brought up something about me. She was reading in a conversation to another guy about me being a narcissist or something like that. And something clicked in my head. And so I think we talked about this. I don't know if you guys know, but I stream I haven't in a while. I stopped. I actually came off social media for a little while. I haven't been doing the travel thing or any of that because I've been trying to focus on myself and my mental health, and that was a big issue. And so I think that my streaming came off because I am very charismatic. I do have a lot of these traits, but I am not in using them in a way to like charm people, to get people. I don't need this attention. Obviously, if I needed the attention, I would have never came off social media. I don't need the attention, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so I think in the beginning that this girl maybe thought I was like this or saw my weaknesses or something. And then I think she went on that because then today and yesterday, a lot of the conversation was kept talking about money, you know. You kept asking me for money, but I never asked her for money. I asked her for money one time when I was in Venice. And I did. I told her that. I said, I've never asked you for money. Just the one time.
It wasn't very much.
Well, I just asked her for money. She sent me 65 bucks. Okay. But the other time she just sent me $700, but I didn't ask her for it. It was to buy a little game system. And she said, well, I'll pay half. You pay the other half. I said, okay. But I didn't have the money. I was like, I don't get paid for a couple days. She's like, I'll pay for it all right now. You send me the money back. I said, okay. She sent me the money. I go get the game system. The next day I happen to get paid 2 days early. So I'm like, oh, I got paid. So I sent her the money back. And she's like, oh, I was just kidding, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you were just kidding. You told me to send you half the money back. I would say, here you go. She's like, I was like, well, send it back then. So she sent it right back, right? But she always would bring up stuff like, you know, and she would never really directly rub it in my face, but she would just talk, maybe bring it up in conversation, just remind me.
Why do you think you went back so many times? What was it that she said?
So a lot of people could say it could be about the money, but it was not ever about the money because she didn't give me all this money all the time. She gave me a lot of money when I was living on my property for building stuff on the property. She bought me a bunch of tickets and gave me stuff while I was traveling, but not on a regular. What kept me going back to this girl is her. So when we first met, I was hardcore into the word. I still am reading the Bible, but I was streaming it all on social media, all kinds of stuff. And when we first met, she said she believed in God, but she didn't ever read the Bible, nothing about it, blah, blah, blah. And so progressively, as we became friends and we talked, and she's like, oh, she was really interested in like my healing journey and all this stuff. And so her thing is I led her to God. This is what she said. I led her to God. And so then we started reading the Bible, doing Bible plans together on YouVersion Bible app. And we would stream church on Sundays together. So that's what kept drawing me back. It wasn't the money. It wasn't anything. It was the fact that this is something that's very important, right? And it's something that for my next relationship, you know, you don't need to be exactly where I'm on my journey because like you mentioned earlier, I'm starting my master's degree for a master's in divinity. So basically what you would need to be a pastor or something, or a chaplain or something like that. And so you don't have to be where I am, but you have to be on that same journey. Right. And so she continued, even when the times that we didn't talk, she continued to read the Bible. And how did I know this? Because she was blocked on everything else, but we were still friends in the Bible.
You got that blocking going on.
and so she was on the Bible app, and I could see on the Bible app, it's like social media. There's friends, and there's like a community part, and it comes up little posts. You know, your friend did this, they did this, and she would always read the same time I would, and it would pop up. And so, but that to me is just another way of,
being seen.
Yeah, being seen. And so I feel like she says she didn't use the Bible or God or any of that. But here's the one crazy thing. Not too long ago, just recently, I wanted to talk to her one day about the Bible, and I started getting into a story that most people would know, even if you don't know the Bible that well. And I don't remember the conversation we had. And I started asking her questions, and I'm like, well, okay, tell me this. Because I know a lot of scripture, not a ton. I know I can say a lot of scripture. Some of the addresses, not actually none of the addresses. So I just know a lot of scripture. I remember a lot of stuff, and I remember a lot of stories. And so I started talking about it, and she couldn't answer the questions. And I'm like, okay. So then I started asking her other really basic questions, and she didn't have the answers. And I'm like, you've been reading the Bible for the last how many? Well, I've only been doing reading plans. I haven't read the Bible. And that's understandable because reading plans are not the Bible. However, in every reading plan, it's usually filled at the end, you read scripture out of the Bible. So you should know tremendous amounts of scripture because I've been doing this for 4 years and I have maybe close to 700 reading plans. And so I know so much of the Bible because of reading. And so she has well over what I have. Like she would always tell me she's still getting ready to surpass me, or she's so close. Right, one up me. And so she surpassed me. She got way past me in reading plans. And then all of a sudden, now she's only doing one plan now. She was doing a ton and a ton. And I'm like, oh, so then I was questioning her on it. And she's like, oh, well, maybe I'm just doing too many plans. I'm not taking it. I'm like, okay, well, she's like.
And sometimes it is true though. Like when you study, if you overdo it.
Yeah, but I would say if you're only spending 30 or 40 minutes a day on it, you're not overstudying. You know, if you're spending 10 hours a day, or let's just say 3 or 4 hours a day studying on something, yes, it can be exhausting and you want to shut down and you don't know. But if you're only doing, let's say, 6 reading plans, I mean, I have spent a good hour and a half before in the Bible, and my brain, after about a good 45 minutes to an hour, I can't take any more in. So I understand that, but it's hard pressed for me to believe that for all those years she's been reading this Bible, and then she's bought all these Bibles. She showed me pictures of them. She bought her niece a Bible, and she's been buying all of these books. And she said she's been reading these books, and the one seems like she was reading because she was telling me stuff out of it, and I was like, wow, really? One, it was called Forgiving What You Can't Forget. And so she read a little bit to me, and I was like, wow, this is a pretty good book. So I mentioned a book to her called Captivating, which is written by John and Stacey Eldridge, right? So there's a ministry called Ransom Heart Ministries, and these are really famous. He's a famous author, but a Christian. And he wrote Wild at Heart, which is like the man version, the masculine version. Then he wrote Fathered by God, which is like the second part of that book. Then the ladies all wanted this. And so then him and his wife wrote Captivate. And it basically just boils down to the essence of a feminism and a woman and what biblically that looks like and how to find yourself. And I've actually just got one chapter left because I read the Wild at Heart. That's something else I've done in the last 3 months I've been in here. I've probably read 8 books.
He is a reader. He's definitely a reader.
So, well, no, I don't read per se. I listen to audiobooks, but yeah, I walk around and
that's a good thing too. If you guys want to hear a book, they even have the Bible.
Yeah. That's how I do the Bible. I listen to it. So I'm about to finish this book. So I told her, like, you should really buy this book. It's good for a lot of women. Same thing with Wild at Heart. It kind of walks you through the journey of masculinity, especially it walks you through these wounds that most men have and where they come from, like fatherlessness or aggressive father or a passive father or all of these things. It walks you through all of this stuff and shows you what the wound looks like, shows you these actions, but then shows you, what biblically it looks like to be masculine to do this. Captivating does the exact same thing for women. It's an amazing book, and I recommend it to everybody. And so I recommended it to her. She bought the book, and I kept saying, read the book, read the book, read the book, read the book, read the book. And she'd say, oh, I'll read it. But she never would read it. And then she'd pick it up, read a little bit, and she'd talk, and then she just kept reading. Well, I'm about to be finished with the book, right? And that's not even for me, it's for women, but it's for me to help understand women a little bit better,
right? And
understand their needs, because the dynamic of men and women are completely different. You are right about some things. The way that you view things and the way that I view things are completely different.
And we do have to realize that there's a reason for the differences in certain strengths and perceptions, that it's to complement each other instead of, to embrace the separateness of us to build stronger, as opposed to, we don't always have to be equal, because I'll tell you what, we did a push-up challenge right now, he's gonna win.
Yeah, and that's that's a good point. So but yeah, so this the whole situation with this person, and I would say my trip to England somehow morphed into going back down to see. And with my mental health, it was very easy for that to happen.
Right.
And I could see it happen. And the reason is because I'm in a protected place right now. I'm in a safe environment where I can talk to my therapist. I can talk to the group. I go to different groups throughout the day. I spend all week in groups, and then I see my therapist once a week. And so I could see all of this happening, and I could, I kind of went along with it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put myself in this situation again, but I'm going to kind of disconnect my emotions from it a little bit. And that's what I did. And we can do that, right? We're really good at that, borderline. We can disconnect ourselves, which isn't healthy. It's not a healthy thing, trust me, but we can disconnect ourselves from something.
How do you do that?
If we feel something that's scary. So my therapist and I, we were just talking about this the other day. Like, if I get into a situation that I feel is very uncomfortable, I'll eject, I'll shut down, I'll go somewhere else. It's almost like disassociation in a way, but I'm not really disassociating. I'm just disassociating my feelings. I'm not really, and that's one thing the Marine Corps, this is one of the reasons they pay me, is they amplified that. So say, for example, you're at war and you're going to a war and you're on the battlefield and you're with your buddy and you're going house to house, street to street, whatever. And you're sitting there and your guys are going along, doing your little maneuvers, and your buddy gets his head blown off. This is your best friend. Someone you just spent the last 3 or 4 years with, and this is your best friend. You can't just stop on the middle of the battlefield and start crying. Oh my gosh, no, Tom, Jiro, no. You can't do that. Like, it doesn't work like that. You're at war. You have to keep going. So they've really instilled this switch in us that we can turn off, and we can turn ourselves off. And that's what they say makes us scary, is because we can disassociate from the situation and go. And that's why I have to very well manage myself very well, because there was an instance, and I think we talked about this before, where I had choked my wife and kicked her, right? Because at that time when she tried to stab me, because that's how it went. I didn't just do this. She punched me a bunch of times, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But then that wasn't the defining moment. It was when she went to the kitchen, got a knife, and came out, and then had a candle, and she tried to hit me with the candle, and I put my arm up like this, and then she came around to stab me with the knife, and that clicked the switch in my head, and it flipped whatever emotion, anything that I had off, went click, and then I just kind of became a killer, and I was just like, go.
You didn't kill her?
No, I didn't. I didn't even go to jail. She went to jail because basically when she went to the police station, because we lived right down the street from the house, she went down to the police station and then came in the house and said, oh, I didn't go, because we were dealing with CPS at the time. She's like, I didn't go to the police. I said, that's okay, because I called them. And she freaked out. Why did you do that? And she didn't really understand, because most, and I'm sorry to say this, but most civilians just don't have any clue. They don't know. And it's not, I'm a badass, I'm not this, I'm not trying to say that. And she would always think, oh, you think you're just this Marine badass, right? That's not it at all. We've been programmed. We were deprogrammed and we were programmed. And the thing is, she didn't understand that she had flipped the switch, and she was close to death. I had almost choked her to death. And something, God, thank you, had stopped me, clicked me back out of it. And then I opened my eyes and realized what was happening. I was like blackout. And then I let go, and I'm like bawling my eyes out. I called the police. When they got there, I said, take me to jail. This is what it is, And they're like, okay, get dressed. And I told them I choked her and all this. So I'm getting dressed to go to jail. And another cop shows up, and the other cop knew my wife at the time from high school. He knew her behavior and knew everything. He's like, no. Nobody's going anywhere. You take him outside, you come with me. So we get separated. I tell the story. She tells the story. We tell the same story. She punched me, hit me. Like, I didn't do anything. I did. So don't let me pretend like I'm this victim, right? I took her phone away from her because she was in the living room texting soccer coach, trying to sleep with him while I was sitting here. And then she took her phone. I took her phone away when she went to the bathroom, and I wouldn't give her phone. And that's a form of control. And so then she's punching me in the head, give me my phone. I'm like, no, you're texting our kids' soccer coach right in front of me, trying to sleep with them, saying all this stuff, having this great old conversation while your husband's sitting right here, And so then she kept punching me, provoking me, and I didn't do anything. I just let it go. It wasn't until she threw the knife around. That's when everything got crazy. And so she told the same story. And then what happened, she runs out into the kitchen, tries to slam a half gallon of vodka, and then wrestles and fights the cop. And then the cop drags her out. So it's not like I'm out there to just rage kill people or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm there
and
for.
that's like the reactive survival mode.
Right.
Self-defense.
It just happens to be untrained in a particular manner to do that. And that's not a good thing to set me off, because I go into that, I flip into that mode, and then I'm like, but I don't want to do that. And that's something that we've been working on here. You know what I mean? And that thing is like anger. And that's a good thing about medication. It brings me down a lot of times. And I'm just like, yeah, all right. And, you know, instead of being so extreme, I'm less extreme now. I'm more.
And I will tell you this, like we were standing in the next room, and we had this nice conversation, and he was very calm. We were talking about how the medications are helping, and he's talking about how he feels more clear and his thoughts aren't racing. And then we talk about it's wonderful, and you can see him getting fired up. So the people that you are with, or the people that you entertain in your mind, can change even just how your day is, even if you're not around them. So if you allow them to overpower your mind, it can change your life. And if you can take control of your thoughts, whether it's even utilizing medication or therapy, you were pretty peaceful. Now, you also said too, it's like you're now at like a level 4 when before you were at a level 10, as far as like the anxiety.
Well, you see what she does is she'll message me and text me right through all of this. She'll message me and text me through all of this, and then she'll get me going. Because like I said right earlier, we were fine, we were talking. I went into my group, I got off the phone, and I was sitting here, but I hadn't called her after group. I haven't talked to her, I didn't call her, whatever. And she just said goodbye.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And I was like, what the heck? So I responded, and then it was like, oh, I blocked you on everything. I'm like, okay, if you want to go, that's fine, go. And then she sends me photos of me blocked on everything. And I'm like, why is she sending me this stuff? I don't understand. She's just baiting me. That's baiting. That's all that is. She's baiting me into these conversations. And she just doesn't see that, or she just knows. The thing is, this one is not, I understand what you say about awareness and unawareness, and like I subconsciously, I will sometimes do these behaviors like this, right? Where like the idealization, devaluation, sometimes I can see that, where like if it's not going my way, or ideal. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I do that. But I'm unaware of it.
Right.
The thing is, now that I see it, I'm aware of it. I can look back into my behavior and say, oh, I see when this didn't work for me. I devalued her and I made her feel like this, whatever. I can see that now, where before I couldn't see that behavior. And so I want to say this, I would understand that, I probably played a bigger role in the loss of my kids than I'm taking the blame for. I don't believe the means justify the end. I don't believe that at all. I believe there's lots of borderline, a lot of people out there who have their kids still that have these mental health disorders.
Or even to allow you supervised visitation.
But well, I did, yeah. We wouldn't even get into all that, but yeah, I don't think what happened was right. However, I could see if this is what they were aiming at and saying that, okay, you have this untreated mental illness you're not looking at. They didn't say that though. That's not how they played it out. They played it out in a way different manner. And so, I guess in the sense I can see, but I think with this girl, right, go back to the situation, is I think a lot of my behaviors, sometimes I just don't see them. Like we talk about in some of the groups, what need I'm just trying to fulfill a need. And I don't see that because I'm not even aware of the need that I'm trying.
Bad behaviors are usually
right.
As a teacher, we have to realize these kids are acting out, whether they're hungry or they're tired or they're frustrated or lonely, that the behaviors are because of an unmet need.
Right. And so that's where the spectrum comes in, right? That's where you get this spectrum of people that are extreme, or people that are, because you have to think about this, like you said, it starts as children, right? So this was said somewhere, and I said this before, I think I'll say it again, children are the biggest narcissists.
Yeah. They say the 2-year-olds pound for pound.
So, however, they grow out of it, but some people don't grow out of it. And especially people that go through traumatic childhood experiences, they have all these unmet needs as children. And so they try to meet them as adults. And this is where I'm at on that spectrum. But that doesn't take away for the fact that I have empathy. However, I think the person that I'm dealing with, I think they're fully aware of what they're doing. Whether they see things in a different perspective, I think they're aware that they're baiting me, that they're doing these particular things. Because you can't just say like all of this stuff, all of the investing the money or not showing up all of these times, and then going back to blaming my behavior, like narcissistic abuse, they do this crazy stuff and then you react and then they say, look at your behavior, you're crazy, you're the crazy one. And that's what she's been doing over and over and over again. Oh, look at all the stuff you did. Look at, you did this, you acted out, you acted crazy, you did this. Well, yeah, but was I like that when I was on my way to England, sitting in your town? Was I acting that way? No, I wasn't. Or was I doing this? Like, the last time I did freak out and told her to F off, keep her tickets when we were supposed to meet last time. And she said that, well, you freaked out when we were supposed to go to Malaga, Spain together. Right. But you assured me that no matter what, and this is the thing, right? We talked about this. You assured me that no matter what, you would be there the second that I got off that plane. And then you gave me some excuse about your stepdad was in the ICU. It's always an excuse about something. And then how do you combat that? My stepdad's in the ICU. What am I supposed to be, a heartless mofo and be like, I don't give a shit, you should be here? Right. No, of course not. What am I going to say? It's just convenient that it's always those times, there's always an excuse. So now it's like, well, I'll meet you at the airport when we go to Malaga. I'm like, okay, no. There's like a day and a half or something in between, But if you really reflect back and we just focus, well, let's just forget all of those other times and focus on one time. And I just thought about this. The day that I was at the bus station waiting for her and she was supposed to show up, she didn't show up. I went out that night and got wasted, got to a fight, got banned from a couple of pubs in England. So we talked and she put me up in a hotel for 2 days. She had 2 more days of me being in that town to come and see me. Right. Why didn't she come and see me any of those times?
Or even ask you to meet me for coffee at the at the hospital just for a hug, and then I'm going to go spend time with my touch base a little bit. I mean, you're from America all the way over there.
And I've given everything up too for her. So I'm aware of the behaviors, and that's one of the reasons why I've been talking to her lately, because I'm really interested in also the fact that if I can get help, can these people really get help? Can they be aware of their behaviors, see it and not? But according to her, when you listen to her, like I sent her a video from that psychiatrist about borderline, and I watched it with her, which is probably a terrible idea because it just gives you all my weaknesses. But I've already given her all my weaknesses, she knows. And so she watches it, and her response is, man, maybe I'm borderline. But then I'm like, okay, well, I see some behaviors, but I see some narcissistic behaviors. And so she looks up narcissism. She's, no, I'm none of those. So then she looks up borderline. She's, I'm none of those either. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're the one that just watched the video and said that maybe you are, but now you're none of it. Now you don't have any problems, right? And so I think that, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know these things. I can spot the behaviors. I don't know why they are. I've never done the studies. I don't know, most of the personality disorders can't be changed because it's part of your personality. However, like they said, the prognosis for borderline is very good. But I was watching an interview with a psychopath or a sociopath or whatever the other day, and it was this guy who's been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and he was opening up just like this, talking about how he does exploit people. Yeah. And he has to isolate and stay away from people because he does exploit people. That's the difference. I don't do that. And so, but what he said is, and this made me think about a realization for even me, maybe. Most of the time, people like that don't get help unless they end up in jail.
Yeah, there's got to be some mortification. Either they lose absolutely everything.
But like for me, I ended up losing my mind, and like I had an extreme situation happen, and that pushed me to get help because I knew. And I had come back to the US. The thing is, I mean, I didn't completely I did lose everything, but I still get a nice check every month. I could easily go get a place. I've got money saved right now. I could just go get my own little apartment and go on with my life. I came back to the States, and my friend and my son are like, wow, just get a job, Dad, just get a job, you know, you're fine. You don't need mental health help. You don't, you know, just get a job, start working, get a place, and you're fine. But I knew inside that wasn't right. I knew that wasn't true. I knew I needed mental health help. I knew what I was like, I don't care what y'all are saying. Because it wasn't so extreme. Once I was back in my safety zone, I was fine. I was with my granddaughter all the time, you know, watching her while my son and, you know, they went to work or whatever, and we were having a blast and everything was grand. It was just, I knew inside I wasn't right. I knew I wasn't going to progress in life if I didn't really address.
One thing I really appreciated, you are open and honest. You say some things that most people wouldn't say. They still try to keep it hidden. And you're not BSing us. You're not out, you know, saying that you're not drinking anymore. I did a video, I think you saw it on that Facebook dating, where the guy had said that he drinks occasionally, and then he went to a rehab center because he had some alcohol issues, and then he started drinking again. So he's going back into the situation, and he was even drinking while I was talking to him. So the chances of him drinking at that time, you know, so it's like you're probably drinking a lot more. So he's not out partying, sleeping with prostitutes, things like you're taking it very seriously. You're getting more spiritual, and it's not just going to church on Sunday. He's putting it into his life and putting it into action. So I really appreciated the things that you have committed to.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's one thing that does bother me is like that girl. She said she tries to tell people that I wear a mask, and I don't wear a mask. I am the same here. I will be the same in front of you. If we were in a conversation, I would go to a bar. I don't know Cynthia from Adam, and I've told her all this stuff. I told all this stuff on Facebook and social media, you know. And one of the things she'll say is, "Well, yeah, but they don't know how you act towards me." Well, okay. In a relationship, if you're in a relationship for a long time, number one, you're going to fight, right? You're going to fight. You're always going to poke at each other. You're always going to say things. I'm not unaware. Like I think it was, I don't know if it was today or yesterday or today maybe, that I said to her, I think that you just act like I don't understand human behavior. Human behavior doesn't differ from person to person. Human behavior is human behavior. We all do all of the same things, whatever the need is or whatever we're trying to, you know, do in the situation, that the motive might be different, but the behavior is all the same. However you're trying to do, we're all self-seeking. We're all seeking to fulfill needs of our own. You know, we're all protecting ourselves. All of these things are the same.
And sometimes too, like, you know, there are people who are selfish, but then there's people who are super giving. But that's still, you're giving a lot of times to fulfill a need. I feel good that made me feel good. So I'll sacrifice, you know, or if you take because you feel that you don't have. So it is behaviors that we all adjust.
So the thing is, I understand and I'm aware of this, and I try to normalize this. Whether I'm making the right choices or doing something bad, I normalize that, hey, this is something that we've done as a society and a culture. We've labeled these terms, narcissism, psychopath. You would be surprised at the amount of narcissists and psychopaths. They say that the percentage is very low, but it's because I want to talk about, it's the same as sexual abuse, child sexual abuse. The numbers are really low. It's because there's a ridiculous amount that's not being reported. Right. And it's the same thing as narcissism, psychopathy. You would be surprised how many doctors or lawyers you probably went and saw, or people you've talked to, police officers that are narcissists. I mean, you see them all the time when they're using their badge to manipulate women or to do certain things. That's what this is. However, we've put this stigma on it. We've made it, you know, we've made this term to be monstrous, when the reality is it's not. However, we don't want to normalize the behavior and say it's okay. We want to make you aware of the behavior on what to look out for. However, you also have another end of the spectrum that we do the reason why there's that bad,
Right.
stigma behind it is because there are malevolent people out there. There are people out there who don't believe in anything, who don't have any emotion, who don't feel anything, and they just are out there to hurt people. Because you will learn, hurt people hurt people. You hear that saying often. And so you do have to be careful to look out for that, but not, and sometimes I find myself labeling too many people too much. Like, oh, and I have to remember.
And that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. But sometimes we might mislabel.
Yeah.
We have to be very cautious, and also to put that on somebody can affect their reputation, their ability to have friends, jobs, things like that. So, we're not
psychologists. We're not, and it takes a long time, anyways, to come to these diagnoses. You don't just analyze. You don't sit down in a couple therapy sessions and go, oh, this person's a narcissist, or this person has borderline, or this person's a psychopath. Number one, most of the time, psychopaths and narcissists won't go to get therapy. But in order to get these diagnoses, it takes a long time, years of interaction with a therapist or a psychologist, whatever, in order for this person to say, okay, yes. And then a lot of times, my case, i.e., I've been analyzed, or what do you call it, evaluated by multiple psychologists. It wasn't just one that was like, yes, this guy is. It was multiple different psychologists that say, yes, the behaviors, everything's indicative with borderline. So that's how I got the borderline diagnosis. It wasn't just one day one person decided to say, you're borderline. Have a nice day. That's not how it works. So we have to be very careful when we label somebody. All we can say, and this is why I said earlier, like, for example, with this girl, I can't say she's a narcissist because I don't know and I'm not a psychologist. But what I can say is behaviors are indicative of narcissism. You can say that. There's nothing wrong with that. And, a lot of these behaviors overlap. So it's really hard to kind of poke that out. That's the thing. Like, but it's generally when you see people hurting people a lot or doing things to fulfill their own agenda, that's when it becomes like, okay, you have to really pay attention to this person because they're really, it's one thing when I'm destructive for the most part, borderlines this is another thing, separating factor in these personality disorders. Most of the time, I hurt myself. I'm destructive to myself, not to others around me. Indirectly, maybe to others around me, but most of the time, I self-sabotage me. Narcissists and psychopaths, on the other hand, they hurt other people. They're not trying, it's not about them hurting themselves or them self-sabotaging. They will self-sabotage because they don't know what they're doing. But in the long run, they're hurting people to fulfill their own needs, whatever it is. I will crush that person. I will do whatever I need to do to fulfill my needs. So that's a big differentiating factor as well. Personality disorders are very interesting, and you could almost say, is it science? Is it natural selection? What is it? Because in a sense, borderlines and narcissists, maybe, I don't know, there is a sense of feeling separated from other people. And so I will say that I don't want to say I'm better than anybody else. I don't want to say, that I'm smarter than anybody else. I do believe I'm a highly intelligent person. And it's hard to say, it's hard for me to say I don't believe I'm smarter than anybody else, but I want to say I'm smarter than most average people. I would say that. But to say I'm not smarter than anybody else, that's a far cry. That's hard to say that. However, if there's one thing that we do share that's in common, that all of us feel set apart from everyone else. I don't feel that I am.
You mean everybody in the world?
Society. I don't feel like, and it's the same thing like this. If you listen to this sociopath, I feel like almost, and one of the guys I heard is like, I almost feel like an alien. And I used to say that all the time. I do feel like an alien sometimes. Like I don't fit in. Like I don't belong to the same, because I can't see the patterns. I can't see the things that people do, the 9 to 5s, the coming home watching reality TV. I don't know how to say it. It's like I'm not trying to piss people off, but I feel like that is like, and this is where the narcissism comes in, right? Narcissistic. I feel like all of that is like, I guess it's not that I'm too good for it, but it's like I wouldn't waste my time doing stuff like that. That isn't really like, how do I say it? It's not really doing anything positive in my life to put me in a better direction.
Just being stagnant.
Yeah. And so I see it as almost like, why are you just wasting your time watching reality TV or doing this? Like, you're dumbing yourself down. And I won't put myself, like, I stopped watching TV years ago. I no longer watch TV. So that is almost this sense of like, I'm better. I'm this.
Right.
I don't think I'm better. I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I think whether you're the dumbest guy in the world and, you know, you love American Idol and whatever, you still deserve all the same rights I have. You still deserve the same treatment I have. I just feel different, that we're worlds apart, that I am not in the same realm that you're in. And I feel that way with the majority of society. And so I isolate, just like that sociopath, same thing or whatever, the interview, he isolates. I isolate myself from people because I feel like sometimes it's hard to have good conversation with someone that can be on my intellectual level. And that's a sad thing to say, but that's the truth.
So like, it's kind of interesting too that you said how you isolate, which can be another form of self-harm by isolating yourself. And sometimes we protect ourselves too. But when you isolate, do you emotionally isolate or you physically isolate?
No, I physically isolate. I am in my emotions all the time. I'm in my head all the time. So I'm like feeling like I'll be isolating in my room or whatever, and I'll feel like really sad or really, you know, anxious or really, you know, whatever. A lot of anxiety, a lot of anxious, and so I still feel all that, but I think a lot of it is, like you said, to protect myself. I don't want to go around people. I don't want to, because I don't trust anybody. I think everybody's out to get me. And that's one of the beliefs that I did on that little thought chart. Like, I believe everybody's out to get me.
To hurt you, or to take advantage of your money, or
like hurt you. Take advantage of it, hurt me, I guess. Not like I'm not worried about money. I don't care about that.
Or cutting you down.
It's like, I feel like everybody has some sort of motive. Nobody can just be, you know, and I know that's not true. I know that's not true because I can reflect back. But like, for example, like my buddy in England who I'm supposed to go stay with, I feel like there's a motive there. Like maybe he's trying to do something or trying to, like, you know, bring me down or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And all of the interaction I had with him is positive. So why am I, you know, that's one thing about Borderline. We focus on that negative emotion. It's that negative.
And that's what gets really confusing with, now that you say that about Borderline, but also Narcissists, where they put things on you and you're like, what? I haven't even done anything. Like, you.
Well, it just happened today, actually. That's what I just said. Remember what we were just talking about how I was trying to figure out why she was saying this stuff to me. And she was like, well, I just knew maybe you might say something to me about it. And I'm like, wait a minute. So it's like, what did I say about that video? Yesterday I was watching this video on YouTube about this guy. He was a pedophile, and he went to this school during family time, and he went in and pretended he was this little girl's dad, and the real parents were there. And it got real weird. It got really weird, but I think he was going to try to kidnap her and take her and do his little thing, whatever. He had never been in trouble, none of this stuff. He got caught red-handed and he didn't know what to say. But the reality is he didn't commit a crime. Even though he did all this, he didn't commit a crime. And so the parents were so angry and they wanted him to take him to jail. But he's like, look, the officer's like, I'm sorry, we understand totally. Like, we want to do something, but our hands are tied. We have to operate within the confines of the law. And there was no crime committed. So there's nothing that we can do. And so it's the same scenario where in this particular situation, what you're talking about is she told me that I possibly could have done this. And I know you well enough. Yes, I possibly could have, maybe. But I wasn't even thinking about, like, even that whole scenario about she was saying her talking to her sister about questioning her and all this. And I'm like, I didn't even know you were talking to your sister. Like, why would I say anything about it? I'm confused about where all of this is coming from. And she's like, oh, I knew you'd say something to me. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about right now.
And it causes arguments, and that's
well, to me, that was like baiting, you know, like she's baiting me, and she says I'm doing that to her. But the thing is, I don't see it as baiting. I see with her, I present her with truth, and she tries to skate around the truth or tries to project on me or whatever, or gaslight me. And I see all of those behaviors. And when I say it to her,
Right.
now this I could understand what you're saying. In her mind, she takes it as a personal attack.
Yeah. And also, she will see it different. How you said about the fact that you lied to me. I don't care if you were talking to the guys. So you want to hear, you're right, I lied. What she is doing is she is putting it in a different realm of, he probably thinks I'm cheating. So she doesn't want to talk about this because she's trying to defend, I'm not cheating. But you're like, but you lied. And she's like,
going on about this whole what they
is,
talked about. And I'm like, I told you I don't care what y'all talked about. The point is I caught you lying, and now you're just admit to the lie. And she skates around it every time.
Because in her mind, if you lie, like if the situation was reversed, and you lied, she's going to think it's because you were talking to a girl. So she puts it in her mind that that's what you're thinking, but you're not thinking that. But
no, I'm just thinking about the lie. That's it. But it's funny you brought up the thing as if this is where you got to really check these thoughts, right? And this is where this CBT is really working. So in your example is, in her mind, she thinks that, oh, I think she's going to be cheating. However, don't forget the message that I got from her that said we were never in a relationship.
Right.
So how can you say in her mind she's thinking that when she says to me we were never in a relationship?
Because they will do that. That's like a common thing. I never loved you. We were never in a relationship. I could find better. All these different things is a shutdown, protection mode. And if she acknowledges the relationship, which she knows because you guys were planning a wedding.
Yeah.
She knows there was a relationship.
And I'm the one that said to her, there's no relationship. And it was only because after I got here and started to get healthy, I understood that this is not a real relationship. This is only like, we could call it, and I told her that we could call it dating. We were dating on the phone for a couple of years and we were headed towards having a relationship. And I said that to her, but there was never a relationship. And I think it's because I said, I talked to other girls and I said, well, you had no right to ever say anything to me about this or that or what I did. And that was just me probably being that way, like, right. Oh, I can do what I want or whatever, blah, 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 which isn't right either. But the reality is we were never really in a relationship. We were only just dating per se. Emotionally, we were in an emotional relationship. Right. We just never were in an actual. In order to have what's called a complete a relationship, you have to have the physical aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it. You can't just have one part of it and call it a relationship. I mean, you can, it is a relationship, but it's just a different type. It's not really a romantic. It's not really a romantic relationship because we didn't have any of the romance.
You never even held her hand.
No. And so that is, but the whole thing is just, the thing that I can't get past is I've told her 3 times today. I said, okay, if you want to go then, and she keeps coming back. And I'm sure.
I can see if you and I got the fight. I believe when I go out the door, I told you I was leaving. Yeah. You put my head back in. No. She did it at least 3 times.
Yeah, I don't want to fight anymore. I've had enough of that with my last ex, and I started to, even at the very end, I started to do that with my ex. I said, all right, well, we'd get into a fight and I'd leave. And she would chase after me. But she was also 13 years younger. And then I would go away for an hour and she'd be blowing my phone up. And I'm like, dude, leave me alone. What are you doing? Where are you at? I'm like, yo. And all I would do is I would like drive to the park, sit at the park and like, just want peace. Just want to sit there. I just want peace. I don't want to be disturbed. Right. Let's let it cool down and then we'll revisit it. But no, it didn't work. Did you tell her that? Yeah.
You told her I just need peace right now?
Yeah, but it didn't matter. My ex-wife was just the same way. Similar situation. So
and that sometimes you'll have somebody with an abandonment issue, and some people do need to have that quiet, not talk it out. And that
I never used to be that way. I used to be the one that would be like her and just, we're gonna resolve it right now. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But I will say this too, when you get older with borderline too, especially, and another therapist told me this, eventually you kind of get tired of your own shit. And you kind of get tired and you just want peace and you're just tired of all the chaos. And that's where I'm getting to. Like, I don't want chaos anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I understand you're going to have a little arguments and you're going to have this and you're going to have that. But when it's coming to being all of the time, then it's a problem. Then it's like, hey, back up. I'll just rather let it go. Okay, whatever. But to me, with this girl, it feels like it's a game. Like it's like she has to try to reel me in and then shut me down so that way she can be the one that
she
wins.
wants to be the final word.
Have the, you know what? Have the final word. Have it. Have the final word and enjoy your time.
Well, Joshua, it was so nice. We do have the Joshua Schwartz series, and would you be available for some Zoom call?
Absolutely. When I'm in England, I'll be able to, yeah, I'll have my computer set up. This is why it's important I get my own room.
That's right. So we'll see Joshua again. Thanks so much for watching. And if you guys need one-on-ones are available. And I'll see you soon. Topic requests are always welcome. Have a good day.